Hello, good evening, Source Nation, and welcome to SRN Live Television. I am your host, Author Kimberly McLemore, and thank you for tuning in tonight to my show, The Author's Corner. Tonight, we have another amazing show in store for you. But before we get started and before I bring on my special guest, let me tell you just a little bit about myself and the purpose of my show. I am the author of How to Be a Success by Just Being You. I am also the author of the memoir, Deception of the Heart, a real look into domestic violence, and my newest book that's coming out in December the 15th, which is this amazing book called Are You Living or Existing? The Pros and Cons of Balancing Life. I am also the owner and CEO of the Women's Small Business Initiative LLC, and I'm the host of the podcast show Your Resource for Success, which is on Spotify and iHeartRadio. I'm also the founder of Author Kimberly and McLemore LLC and the host of this new amazing radio TV television show called The Author's Corner. But let me just tell you a little bit about the purpose of the show itself. The reason for this platform is that I want to give all new or existing authors an opportunity to share their stories, tell us a little bit more about who they are, tell us about their events and engagements they may be having coming up soon, and of course, where can we purchase the book? So, the other thing I want to talk about here, of course, is our major guest. I want you to learn a little bit here about Author Sherri Simmons, who is the author of Underneath the Hat. Sherri is a wife and a mother to her beagle called KB. And I won't go any further than that because what I want to do, Source Nation, is I want to bring on my lovely guest, special guest, Miss Sherri Simmons. Hi, Sherri. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show this evening, and I can't wait to hear more about this beautiful beagle. I've never had anybody give me the short bio to talk about their beagle too. So we're going to talk about your beagle. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about a whole lot of other things. But
Okay.
before we get started, please tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Sherri Simmons. I am a wife of 2 years to Vincent. And as you mentioned, my Beagle KB. I don't have any children yet, but he's like my fur baby.
Uh-huh.
So, he's very spoiled. I am the oldest of four. I have been in the Chicago public school system for 14 years now. I'm currently a STEM integration specialist at Wentworth in the Inglewood neighborhood. I've been a third grade teacher. I've been an assistant principal for 2 years, and now I'm diving into coaching, which I really do love. I'm very active at my church, Greater Mount Hebron, which is on 80th and Wood in Chicago, Illinois. I'm now the church clerk. I've raised in church from an usher to a praise dancer, and even as a first lady at one point in time. So I've moved up the ranks inside the church, and now I'm working on my doctorate degree in teacher leadership and working with my book as well, and also a new web series, which we'll talk more about based on the book, and
Mhm.
also my mentoring foundation for young girls called Young Ladies at All Times.
Okay, so is there anything that you're not doing?
Uh, a lot of things I had to push to the back burner for a minute because I was starting to put on too much. So now that I've learned to let some things go,
Mhm.
that's the shortened version of how it is now.
Okay, so that is the shortened version.
Hmm.
So before we dive into the book itself, talk to me a little
Hmm.
bit about your progress. Now, you said that you have been in education for 14 years now, and
Hmm.
hey, and I love that I got another Midwesterner on with me. You were from the Chicago area. I'm originally from Davenport, Iowa. So, how you
Okay.
doing? My next door friend.
Yes.
So that is great to hear. So talk to me a little about the background of your 13 years and then how you forged yourself, I guess a little bit more about you're the founder of the president of the Young Ladies at All Times. So talk to me a
Hmm.
little bit about that. I mean, I'm sure that there's a reason and purpose of how all of this came into play, but
Hmm.
So tell me about your inspiration of doing all these things and how this comes together.
So my foundation, Young Ladies at All Times, started February of 2016. And I actually, as you stated, it came from me being a teacher in Chicago public schools. I was going for my master's and I had to do a paper on a topic of my choosing. So I chose to focus on reality TV and the effects that it has on young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, of observing my students that I had in my intermediate math class, third, fourth, and fifth graders, and speaking to them about the different things that they were exposed through TV, I realized that a lot of the things that they were learning about how to carry themselves as young ladies came from watching reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to create a program that showed them how to be young ladies at all times, regardless of the situation that you're in, and that there are other ways of handling certain situations differently from what we see on reality TV today.
Yeah, and I love that concept, and you're absolutely right. But it's amazing how I know you're focused on young girls, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
adults who need that same program.
Yes, because
you
the
know,
apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
exactly.
Hmm.
The sad part about it is that though it seems is that the television has become our children's foundation versus it being
Yes,
the home as being the foundation. So your
yes.
program, I just love it. That's phenomenal. But I think that a
Hmm.
lot of times these parents need to be just as much as a part of the program as those children. Just like you said,
Exactly.
because that apple doesn't fall far from that tree, like you just said. And
Hmm.
even though that child may change, but if they're going back to that same home, they're going to learn the same thing. So it's like you're constantly restarting over and over to get them to maintain that what you're teaching them. So I always think it's important that the parents are just involved in them. I'm sure that's even probably harder because most parents
Yeah.
they think that they've already got the answers and they've learned everything, but not realizing that the things that they have learned or they're not teaching their children is not helping them, and it continues that same vicious cycle, right?
Right. But I've learned from the 2 years that I've had the program that all the girls really want is for someone that they can talk to and that will listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the things that I was able to instill in them with the help of other sponsors, friends of mine who came and showed them how to wear certain clothing, how to apply makeup, how to take care of their personal hygiene and their hair, and then exposing them to different restaurants. We took etiquette classes, how to sit at a table, how to enter a car, which a lot of women don't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So with them seeing those things from somewhere else and then bringing them home, I've had a lot of testimonies from mothers specifically that was saying that they can see a difference in their daughter and that they were able to teach them things that they didn't know as well. So even if we can start with the child,
Mm-hmm.
then it'll trickle down to the adult, even though I was brought up that the parents were the example. Now sometimes we have to teach the child how to do things in order for it to sometimes affect the parents.
Absolutely, and not just the parents, all that they're socializing with, and so you
Hmm.
the full effect, and that full effect, like I said, it trickles down, and once it hits that parent can also help others, like their other family members, because they've learned those same things from that
Yes.
foundation that they were created from.
Hmm.
So yeah, your program is
Exactly.
phenomenal. I love that. So talk to me a little bit about from those programs that you talked about a spew of other programs. Talk to me a little bit more about your other programs that you have.
So from the book, I decided that which we'll dive more into, but I learned after going through therapy and discussing some of the things that I had actually gone through that I mentioned in the book, that there are so many people who are suffering in silence,
Mm,
and that I felt like I was by myself in a lot of the things that I wrote about in the book. And once I started to open up and share those things with other people, I realized that I wasn't alone. And so God showed me that I'm using you as a vessel. You sat for so long quietly and never said anything, and now I'm giving you the voice to use it. So I've started a web series with the same name as my book, Underneath the Hat.
Okay.
And we've actually already filmed 4 episodes, but the
Okay.
first episode is actually available on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on my YouTube channel underneath the Hat web series. And we talk about mother daughter relationships, which ties into the young ladies at all times. So I have 2 guests on there and also a therapist, and we just have a raw conversation about how these women grew up and the things that we receive from our mothers, our foundation, and how those things have helped to mold us as women and mothers and wives.
Mm-hmm.
And so every month there'll be a new episode posted. The next one is coming out in December about infertility because I actually suffer from it. And so all of the different topics have to do with things that I've actually dealt with or people around me have dealt with and felt that they were dealing with things alone. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to give a voice to the voiceless so that we can have that conversation and stop putting things under the rug, because eventually you start to stumble over things that you push under instead of just dealing with them.
Absolutely. And I like what you said. I mean, the biggest problem that people have is communication, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we all are going through something tragic or not tragic. We have a fear of what people think, or what they're worried
Right.
about, or either the other part of it comes that we don't know where to go or what to do. And even though
Mm-hmm.
we have everything at our fingertips today, right? It
Right.
amazes me how hard it is for people to reach out to others, that to or programs that are already available because of our fear
Mm-hmm.
that we have.
Right. Right.
And that's the part that's amazing, and that's the part that people like you who have the capability to be able to start other programs so that people feel more comfortable and free. And then I think the other big thing is that we all want to be with people that look like us, who've also
Mm-hmm.
been through some of the same problems that we've all been, because you have a better understanding. And as you're saying, when you're going through any type of therapy, sometimes I found that after what I had been through, and my being that I'm a domestic abuse violence, I've been through that, and I'm a survivor of that. That sometimes talking to those people who are therapists, they don't always understand, because even though they have the medical side of it, they don't understand
Mm-hmm.
personal side of it, right?
Right. Right.
But I like the fact that you are providing these web series available for anybody, actually, even though it may focus with women or children predominantly, or young women, that they can be able to see and understand that they are not alone. That is
Right.
phenomenal. And so now, talk to me a little bit about the book itself. So
Mm.
we're gonna bring up the book, because I even got my quick little promo picture of it. I just love this book cover. I love the book cover, and the big thing
Thank
I love
you.
about it is the name. And when you first, when I first seen the book cover itself, the main thing that I kept thinking was like, man, what is this about? Because of course, I'm thinking, wow, this is so classy. And I'm like, okay, underneath the hat, what there could have been a million of things that you could talk about, obviously, with this title, right?
Yes.
Tell me the story about behind the name of it before we actually dive into the book itself.
So the name comes from the fact that I was actually a first lady of a church in Chicago. And as a first lady, you have a certain persona. The uniform of a first lady is a big hat. And after going through some of the things that I went through with my first marriage, I realized that I was hiding so many things and emotions underneath the hat. There were Sundays I would go to church and I would have to put on a smile. But when I knew that I didn't feel like smiling, I would wear a big hat because it was hard for you to see my eyes. And so I was able to hide so many of my emotions underneath this hat. But then it also goes deeper into me realizing that I had a voice. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize I had one in the first marriage because I dimmed my light in order for him to shine. And so we have so many people who are wearing different hats, whether it's a father or a mother or a spouse or at work, we all wear different hats. And so many times we have things that we're going through that we don't discuss with people. And we put on this facade and this mask to make it look like everything is okay. But really, we're suffering underneath the hat. So it's a
Absolutely.
play on the uniform of a first lady,
Hmm.
because it deals with my first marriage and the things I went through as a first lady, but also the things that we as humans go through that we don't want people to know about, so we hide it underneath the hat.
Absolutely. Oh, like love it. So before we dive into it, I got to do my 2 second
Hmm.
commercial here. But I just want
Okay.
everybody to realize, Source Nation. Look, if you're just tuning in, have already missed some important, phenomenal information about this young lady right here. But you can absolutely come back and review it. But I want you I want to reintroduce to us that we have here author Sherri Simmons, who is the writer of and the author of the book Underneath the Hat. So let's go ahead and continue this, because I'm telling you now, I'm really ready to dive into the book, because the concept of knowing that, you know, I love how you tied it in with the church piece of it. You know, a lot of times, like I said, what I find with people is that when they see us, whether it's in business or whether you're an author, they all they see is a shell of people. And they believe that
Yep.
everything that we do and we're all okay and that we don't have any problems, and all they see is how beautiful you look and, oh, you got a cute outfit on today, but not realizing what is really truly going on behind that look.
Hmm.
Covering up with makeup, whether they're covering up with clothing, whether they're covering up with that hat you're talking about. Tell me something within the book. I guess maybe even your favorite part of the book, or what what it is that truly inspire you. Besides, I know that you said you came out of from a previous relationship. Talk a little bit about that, and then talk to me more about
Hmm.
yourself.
So, my first marriage, I actually got married when I was 23. We
Mm-hmm.
were high school sweethearts, and the book is talks about Amanda, Jane, and Campbell. So it is a realistic fiction book, but is based on my life story. And so Amanda, Jane, and Campbell represent my ex-husband and myself, and it just goes from the very start of our relationship all the way through the trials and tribulations that we had. And it's just basically me sharing my story. And at the end of each chapter, I explain the lesson and the purpose of the things that I went through. Because so many times we go through things and we end up making the same mistake because we don't reflect
Mm-hmm.
on what was the reason for us going through it. And I've always been, a lot of my friends call me genius because I do so much, as you mentioned at the beginning of the
Right.
interview. What don't I do?
Right.
So I'm very focused, and I love to make sure that I do things decently and in order. And if I can't do it 110%, I won't. And I realized that in order for me to have gotten that mindset is because I self reflect on what worked and what didn't. What can I do differently? So I didn't want to go into another relationship making the same mistakes that I made in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And even though reading the book, you would think, well, a lot of things that happened weren't your fault or weren't Amanda Jane's fault, but there are two people in every relationship. And
Absolutely.
so even though 90% of it was his fault, I played a part in at some point as well. So
Mm-hmm.
the lesson and the purpose at the end of each chapter is basically for me to self-reflect to see what things I could have done differently, what was God trying to tell me, what was I not paying attention to, so that I could learn from the things that I had gone through so I wouldn't repeat the same thing again.
Hmm. And that's what I
Mhm.
just love you talking about, is self-identification, self-reflection,
Mhm.
understanding that there are absolutely two people a part of the process. And even
Right.
though that he was a bigger part of the problem, you realize that you played a piece of that. And a big part of that is usually not knowing how to let go, right? Not understanding
Yes.
that you're staying in the position that you know that's not right for you, even though you may still care about that person, but that's not the right person for you.
Right.
So talk to me, okay, and show your book. I know you have your book with
Mhm.
you. Because like I said, I love the book cover, but I want everybody to really see it. And I mean, it's phenomenal, the story behind it and how it was put together. Whoever your graphic
Thank
artist
you.
was, great job on that. But the big piece that I want you to talk to me about, what part of the book in there that you really want to share, and that reflects on how you discovered who you were.
Ooh. The part that I realized who Sherri was when I was going through um, the separation. So the reason that Amanda Jane and Campbell ended up being separated, she at first thought was because she wasn't domestic.
Mm.
So he grew up raised by his grandparents, and I told she tells him once that you are a 20th century person trapped in a 1950s body. And so he had the mindset of an old man. But I grew up with my mother who worked and my father took care of us. And then when we went to sleep, he went to work. So we lived two different lifestyles
Mm-hmm.
and we were meshing them together into one marriage, but we never communicate about how it would work for us. So we both went in thinking, okay, I want it the way I saw it growing up. He wants it the way he saw it growing up. And they totally clashed. And I realized that I had a voice, but I was afraid to use it
Mm-hmm.
because he was such an outgoing, charismatic person. He was a pastor of a church. We met when I was in high school, so I was 16 when we met, and then we got married when I was 23. So he was my first love and my first husband.
Mm-hmm.
So I can admit that I was naive because I didn't know anything else. So basically, anything he said was law.
Right.
And I mentioned in the book that I knew who God was, but he was my God. I didn't worry about, well, what would Jesus think? It was like, okay, well, what would Campbell say? So I focused so much on him because that was all I knew. And after going through all of the things and God, I call them TKOs, knocking me on my tail because I wasn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you what to do and you're not listening.
Right.
And there was a point where Amanda Jane found out that he was being unfaithful and that he had actually been unfaithful with a close family friend.
Mm.
And this person had been in our house. She was actually the mother of our godchildren.
Wow.
He introduced her as his sister. And we had been on vacation together. I helped pay tuition for the daughter. I was the goddaughter of the youngest one, and then we adopted the oldest two. We've been to family picnics and barbecues on vacation. And then for me to find out that right under my nose, all this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, other things started coming out about other people that had been brought around me, and I wasn't paying attention. So that was the biggest aha moment for me is when I realized that you've been in the middle of mess and didn't realize it because I allowed man to take the place of God. And I realized then that the reason he removed me is because I was paying more attention and idolizing man than I was him. And
Wow.
so even though it took 9 years to figure it out, God
Mm-hmm.
literally had to pick me up
Mm-hmm.
and drop me somewhere else because he knew I wouldn't have left on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to go through drastic measures in order to get my attention, in order for me to realize that I had a voice and to be able to share it so that other people can be healed in the process.
Mm-hmm. Now, in that during that 9 years, did you ever have that instinct of or feeling that something just was never right beyond the fact that you knew that came from two different worlds, you had two different ideologies of how the man is supposed to take care of the home, how the woman's supposed to act within the home? What other
Mhm.
instinct did you have and go through beyond the fact before, God said, look, I'm gonna have to push you down to get you right? But before you went through that, what was it that you kept feeling? Because you had to feel something.
I Okay, it started before we even got married
Okay.
because I actually lived with him and his family my senior year because I was being physically abused at home by my stepfather. And
Wow.
so the last year I had to live with them because I kept running away.
Mm-hmm.
And they allowed for me to move in, and he actually cheated on me while I was staying with them. But again, 17, 18 years old, I'm
Right.
staying at his house. Now, I did have a snap, crackle, pop moment, which I mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But again, nobody, my family wasn't there. They were the only ones I could rely on. So I'm like, I'm not about to burn this bridge.
Right.
We'll forgive and forget. And that was at 18 years old. And then as we continue to date and go through college, I can honestly say I really don't recall. I was so infatuated and in love with this man. It was like I had blinders on.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got out the relationship that I started to see things that I wasn't paying attention to.
Right.
Um, Once I started teaching, we actually had a church member who we went to the same church, and her kids ended up being in my classroom. And then I found out later that there were things going on with them. So it was just signs all over the place that I just was not paying attention to, because I was so in love with this person, because he was giving me something that I wasn't getting from my father,
Right.
and that I didn't see being done to my mother as far as my stepfather. So that's one of the things that I discussed with my web series as well, the father-daughter relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't see things, I was yearning for things from my father, I found it in him. And that's why I was able to turn the blind eye, because he was doing things for me that the men in my life weren't doing.
Right.
And so that foundation was set where it's okay. You see things that's going on, it's okay as long as he's here. So I allowed for a lot of things to happen. Once I realized that they were happening, I was already out the relationship or separated. But inside the relationship, I don't know what kind of blinders they were, but they were deep. Because once I got out, people were like, how did you not know
Right. And
all of
that's
this was going on around you?
right. And I asked that question for a reason, because that's usually the number one thing people say to anyone who's been through something tragic. Well, how did you not know? Why didn't you see this?
Uh-huh.
And like I said, and it's not so much, I think a lot of times that we don't know, but it's for you, I think a big part of it, I absolutely believe there was that fear there. And like you said, you were missing so many things in your life. And that here, this one individual seemed to show that he really cared. The family seemed to show that they cared. And I'm not sure that his family knew what was going on behind those closed doors. But at the same token, it's like you felt like you had everything you needed right there. But then when you took those blinders off, and you realized this was not the man for you, and he is not God, and he is not
Mm-hmm.
Father. It's amazing what transitioned out of all of this. You have
Yes.
blossomed into this amazing individual. You were already amazing, but for you to take everything that you've been through, and here you've turned it into a web series. Here you've got this program for young ladies that you started even before you got, with the book, that's all collaborated together. It all makes,
Uh-huh.
it truly does
Yes.
all make sense. And so at this point, like I say, you know what's going on. You finally figured it out. You've moved forward. So tell me a little bit more about the book, and then we're going to talk about where we can find the book. So we'll need that information.
Okay.
I think that we definitely, everybody needs to get this book, because it sounds like, I love the fact too that you put everything in with characters, to give
Yes.
a better understanding, to read it and realize that this could be you, and probably there's a whole
Yep.
lot of other women and men going through the same thing. And so I love the way you did
Uh-huh.
that. So tell me just a little bit
Thank you.
more about, you're welcome.
Well, with the characters, I wanted to make sure that the names matched the personalities. And
Mm-hmm.
so Campbell actually means double tongued,
Mm-hmm.
because he would tell me one thing, but we doing something else. Um, it was just so many things, and I always felt like, oh my God, like, why is God doing this to me? Why are all these things happening to me? And he had to slowly show me the reason for everything. Um, Me being as loyal as I was, and I mean, I was coming home and I was making more money than him,
Mm-hmm.
which already was a no-no,
Right.
growing up the way he did. And
Mm-hmm.
I had more education, and so he went back to school. It was always a tit-for-tat thing. Well, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go back because smarter than me. I don't need people paying more attention to you.
Yes.
And
Competition.
again, I went from, yes, it's always competition, and he was a master manipulator.
Mm-hmm.
He could talk his way out of a bag. And I was just so in love, like, oh God, everything he says, I'm just gonna do it. And so I would be at home. It was really crazy because Saturdays he would go to the cigar shop to prepare for his sermon the next Sunday. So I would be at Office Max printing up the bulletins for Sunday and making
Mhm.
sure everything was taken care of so that he wouldn't have to worry about it. But Saturdays were the days when he was going out, hanging out with the other ladies, and we
Wow.
had a joint account. So my money was being spent on other ladies and their children. I even mentioned in the book how he was helping to pay tuition for a private school. Now, we don't have any kids,
Wow.
but he was helping pay tuition. I mean, it was just so many things that happened. And young ladies at all times actually stems from the fact that I handled myself as a young lady through all of those things.
Mhm.
I have a chapter in the book called Snap, Crackle, Pop, where I had some moments where I wasn't Christ like, but it could have gotten worse.
Right.
And I mentioned in the book that I actually should have been writing this from behind bars because the things that were actually exposed to me have
Mhm.
pushed so many women over the edge because they're sitting in jail right now because they didn't know how to handle themselves being in some of the same situations that I dealt with. So when people finish reading the book, I've had people who have been there with me who didn't realize everything I had gone through. People who have been friends or co-workers that have read the book and they're looking at me like, wow, how did you go through all that and you're still standing? And I know that it's all a testament and a testimony to the fact that God wants to use me as a vessel.
Absolutely.
And regardless of how I might feel, he had to basically give me tough skin to handle the areas that he's about to take me in,
Mhm.
of people criticizing, not understanding, not being willing to open up, and me still being willing to listen and to provide them with the resources that they need, even if I can't help them personally, putting people around them and exposing them to people that can give them the help that they need.
Absolutely.
So,
Mhm.
with these web series, there will be a therapist
Okay.
because we all know therapy is a curse word. People
Right.
shy away from it, but it actually helped me to get through just being able to talk about it and get it off my chest. And
Mhm.
so I want them to be able to get strategies and things that they can do at home that can help them to get through certain things based on the topics that we discussed.
All right. Well, wow. This has been fun. I mean, we could continue talking. Obviously, we're over our
Mm-hmm.
time, but I
Yeah.
want you to tell the listeners how you can how they can get a copy of your book, and then where they
Mm-hmm.
can find you on their social media platforms.
So the book is available on Amazon, on Amazon Kindle, and also through the hard copy you can get through Amazon as well. Also wherever books are sold.
Mhm.
And my social media, I'm on Sherri Simmons, Sherri Simmons, Simmons on Facebook, and also Underneath the Hat is on Facebook as well, and my Instagram is Underneath the Hat. So go check me out. Also go to YouTube. Underneath the Hat web series, you'll see our first episode called Wind Beneath My Wings, where we're discussing mother-daughter relationships. Subscribe to the page so that you'll be notified of our upcoming episode on infertility.
Absolutely. Oh, this I tell you what, this has been a phenomenal show. I mean, you and this interview has been, like I said, we could keep talking. It's
Yeah.
like, there's so much more information about you and all the other things that you're doing, but I absolutely thank you for coming on and spending time with me and with the listeners. And for those at Source Nation, if you missed this, I'm telling you, you need to start this from the beginning. This woman right here is phenomenal. I thank you so much, Sherri Simmons, for coming on to my show this evening and sharing your story and telling us about your book and everything else that you got going on in your life. Do you, real quickly, let me ask you, do you have any events
Mm-hmm.
coming up this for the rest of this year?
Where I'm actually meeting with my team in December so that we can hit the ground running in January. My goal is to release an episode once a month, and in between the episodes, have a live panel discussion so that we can get more feedback from the people once they've sat and chatted and came up with questions around the topic. So I'll definitely have updates on my website and also through social media of the various panel discussions that we have coming up.
Excellent. Well, definitely keep in touch with me because I need to have you back on this show or either on my other show because we have a lot more to talk about because
It's
I'm
a
sitting
lot.
here like, man, what are you talking about? Just I'm talking about sister to sister. I mean, really, there is so much. I'm just really enthused about this interview tonight because I had no idea. We haven't had an
Hmm.
opportunity to speak prior or anything. So I
Hmm.
appreciate your time and I thank you again for coming on. Sure, you've been phenomenal. Again, Source Nation, if you've missed the show, start this from the beginning. It'll be ready for you here in a few minutes and you can go back and listen to it because this woman, Sherri Simmons, who is the author of Underneath the Hat, phenomenal. Again, thank you, Sherri. You have a wonderful
Thank you
night.
so much, Kimberly.
You are welcome. All right. And for everyone else, oh man, this has been a great show. I just want to say very quickly if you are interested in being on the show in 2019, all you need to do, of course, is send me a simple short bio, as well as you need to send me the short bio, a picture of yourself, a professional picture, of course, and a cover of your book. And of course, if you have a logo for a business, you can send that as well. And you can send that information to my email address, which is kimberlymclemore@gmail.com. That is kimberlymclemore@gmail.com. You can also find me on all platforms, all social media platforms, everything from Facebook to Instagram. You can catch me on Twitter, LinkedIn, all of those under author Kimberly McLemore, as well as just Kimberly McLemore or WSBI, your resource for success. You can reach me there as well on all my other shows. But again, I want to thank you all for stopping by. Tune in for tuning in tonight and stop by and like and review and give us some comments about tonight's show, as well as going to Source Radio Network and SRN Live television pages. But until next time, you all have a wonderful evening and good night.